think we are ready to commence. All right. So, thank you for coming to our session. This is GAM304, Exiting the Data Center, the League of Legends and VALORANT story. And this has been we're at the end of a very long cloud migration, and it's been so many lessons learned, a humongous effort. I'm really proud to be on stage with Riot Games to share with you what the lessons learned were, how this all started from the beginning. We're going to tell it to you in a bit of a storytelling fashion. I'm Hadrian Barron. I'm one of the technical account managers with AWS supporting Riot Games. I have our two Riot champions on stage here. Adi.
Hi, everyone. This is Aditya Kumar. I'm a senior network engineer in infrastructure and operations at Riot Games.
I'm Rory Power, an infrastructure engineer on the infrastructure team at Riot Games.
All right. So let's see, where is this gadget? I will get it started by having Rory tell you about Riot Games, how they originated, League of Legends, and that hypergrowth. And if you all are interested in the games, a little bit about the architecture he'll go into. Aditya and I are going to speak to you about the migrations, the evolution of the program that became the Global Data Center Decommission. And this was a program that ended up with us migrating into 31 different sites globally. So this is AWS regions, local zones, AWS outposts. So humongous project. No understating the level of effort that it took. And we'll wrap it up with takeaways at the end, and we'll have time for Q&A if you want. We'll come off stage and have some personal one-on-ones down here. So without further ado, Rory, take it away.
Thanks, Adrian. So I won't ask if you've heard of Riot Games before. That might be cheating a bit because we've been to reInvent. And you may have caught Brent Rich's keynote, or section during the keynote on Monday evening. But I thought I would ask maybe if how many people, maybe by a show of hands, have played a Riot game in the last year, say? That's a lot. Most of the people. So that's great to see. Maybe how many would have played VALORANT and League of Legends? Basically both. I can't tell. We'll have a face-off at the end. They play all the games. So that's great that you have that context of who Riot Games is, but I'll take you back to the beginning. So Riot Games was founded in 2006. We've grown since then, obviously, to now more than 4,000 Rioters and additional contractors and support staff across 20 offices worldwide. We started originally with League of Legends as our first game that was released, and we've since expanded to the list of titles you can see on screen, including some titles in the League IP, and then some in new IPs such as VALORANT. We also partner with Riot Forge, which has arrangements with external partners who produce completable experiences more than the long-running live services games that Riot focuses on as well. So that's where we are just at the moment. So I'm going to take you back in time to 2009 then and explain the launch of League of Legends. So for those who don't know what League of Legends is, it's a 5v5 multiplayer online battle arena game, or a MOBA, where you group up with four other people and take on another team of 5 to complete an objective to destroy the enemy's nexus. So you choose your own unique champion that you will play from a list of, I think, about 160 we have at the moment, and take that onto the Rift and battle with your friends and try and win the game. It was extremely popular when we launched it, and we quickly realized we needed to bring this to players all around the world. Riot is a very player-focused company. That's at the heart of everything we do. We want to make it better to be a player. So yeah, we set to this task of taking League of Legends to the entire world starting in 2009 and for the next couple of years. So to explain something about the architecture of League of Legends from the client perspective. So these are the screens that somebody would see when they're playing our game. On the left-hand side, you can see our platform experience. So our client connects to our platform servers, and that handles things like friends list, matchmaking, any of the progression systems, your unlocks, and that. So you can do all your out-of-game pieces there. Almost all of that is REST HTTP based over TCP, and it's not particularly latency sensitive. We could deploy these platform servers almost anywhere in the world, and players wouldn't particularly notice the difference. However, on the right-hand side, you can see the in-game experience. So this is actually a separate binary that's run on PC, and that's what runs the in-game experience when you're actually within the game. You've chosen your champion, and you're ready to go and play for your 30 to 45 minutes game. So it's particularly latency sensitive. What happens, as with many online games, is your instructions, your mouse clicks, your spell casts are sent directly to the server, which processes them and takes the results of all of those inputs from all the players and returns them directly to your client. Any change to your latency between you and the game server has a massive difference in terms of your gameplay. Your gameplay would feel sluggish if the latency increased, or if your packets were delayed or discarded by any sort of internet weather. So this is a key part of making the experience of League of Legends good for our players, is to keep this latency for the game server piece as low as possible. So now that you understand a little bit about the architecture of League of Legends and what it takes to run the two sides of our games, I can maybe go to the next slide, and talk about the data centers that we built to take League of Legends to the entire world. So each of these red dots on the map is a data center that served League of Legends for many years. We also partnered with some external partners in Europe and particularly in Southeast Asia with Garena. We had a long-term partnership with them to try and accelerate the rollout of these data centers. It was obviously, I think anyone in the industry would know that building a data center is not a small task. It requires many different levels of expertise in different areas, and can take a long time. So it took us maybe about 4 years between launching all the shards that we wanted worldwide, partnering with Garena, and also rebuilding some of our data centers, consolidating them into larger ones in Europe that we launched in about 2014. So in that period of 5 years between launch and 2014, it was a very busy time for Riot. We continually refined our data center designs, kept on putting new investments in technology, new systems in there to improve the experience for players. But it was ultimately something that we struggled with because it took a long time. When you need to plan out every single piece of physical equipment to support your games, it limits how fast you can move. And ultimately, it wasn't something that we wanted to be the best at. We don't want to be the best data center builder in the world. We want to be the best games company in the world and focus on our players and the experience we can deliver to them. So once we had these data centers, I described before the platform system. Another thing we did to try and accelerate how we would deploy services out to our players was that we invested in our cluster. So our cluster is our internal name for the Riot Container Engine that we used to allow service teams to self-deploy onto our own infrastructure. So much like we now have Kubernetes that is industry standard, we started with our own homegrown container scheduler on top of Docker, and then migrated to Mesosphere DCOS in the second version of our cluster that we call our cluster 2. But what this allowed us to do is to move fast by taking the taken the services that were required to support the current version of League of Legends and also expanded to give new features and new capabilities. They could all be deployed by the individual service teams on their own cadence on top of our cluster without the need for upfront planning and racking of hardware and waiting for those long lead times in terms of power and space and cooling that we would need when focusing on the data center. So this allowed us to deploy on both Riot infrastructure and partner infrastructure later when we would move to AWS. So the next project in terms of accelerating this deployment of infrastructure was we decided we wanted to move to AWS. We knew we wanted at that stage to be a cloud-first company. So we experimented with moving part of the League platform, the legacy monolith platform, to the cloud. We wanted to bring down this long lead time it took to deploy new infrastructure. So we did that. We deployed our public beta environment to cloud in about 2016. And then also 3 of our European shards had their platforms deployed to cloud as well. We still kept some of our key services, our cluster, some of the databases, our firewalls still in the physical data center. So it was an experiment from that area. We didn't go all in on the cloud just yet. But we also didn't realize the full value of what we could achieve in the cloud. So what happened during that period was we almost treated it like another data center. These instances were statically provisioned. It wasn't very easy to scale them up and down. We hadn't invested in the automation to make that simple. We had basically taken the design for our data center and encoded that in Terraform. So it could be managed, but it wasn't as easy as we would have liked it to be. This had an impact because we had sized the shards quite large for the number of players there. So when the number of players just didn't meet that, these shards became relatively more expensive and not as good value for us. It also suffered from the fact that we were migrating to our cluster that I mentioned before. And that meant that we were now doing even less in the cloud. We were bringing things back into the data center, not intentionally, but because of the migration to our cluster. So this project had intended to continue and do all shards, but we ultimately paused it there in 2017 and didn't go any further. So after this stage, things are relatively quiet. We have some platform servers in AWS. We also have some key services like publishing, data, we're consumers of AWS. But it was now time to start putting our core game services into the cloud. So we took the opportunity of the release of Teamfight Tactics, which is a game mode within the League of Legends engine. So it uses all the same infrastructure that I showed you before. But as a strategy game within League of Legends, it's not particularly latency sensitive. So this allowed us to deploy to the closest region without materially impacting the latency or the player experience that they would have. They would just connect to the nearest cloud region when we wanted and get a similar experience. So you can see here the game client, when connecting to our platform server based on the game mode, would either connect to the on-premises game server and be allocated a game there, or in the case of TFT, we would migrate that to AWS game servers and we would run them there. So over the next couple of years, we continued this. This is a very successful launch for us. TFT itself is a very popular game mode within League and drives a lot of traffic. So we were able to, in times of higher load during events or just so in-game events or out-of-game events such as Worlds that drive more player traffic, we spun up more and more game servers for TFT in the cloud. We also took this time to invest in the automation behind deploying these game servers so that we could easily spin them up and down. We contributed to the Terraform to allocate dedicated hosts. That was actually code written by one of the engineers on my team. And we We also invested in getting the servers added to our chef-based automation system automatically so that we could literally increment the number in Terraform to deploy new game servers, and then everything would be handled on the back end. And we used this for many years. So that was great, and we got to the end of 2019, but we were still a single game at that stage, still Riot Game, as Brent mentioned during the keynote. So all of this changed around the 10-year anniversary of League of Legends in October 2019. So we had always been working for many years on R&D titles. But at the end of this anniversary celebration, we spent the first part of it rightfully thanking our players for playing League of Legends for 10 years and being with us on that journey. But at the end of the video, we added a hype piece that I'll play for you here. And in this one clip that you'll see, we announced Wild Rift, which had been talked about earlier in the video, but a mobile version of League of Legends. We announced that Teamfight Tactics would be available on mobile, so you could play it on your phone or iPad. We announced VALORANT, a first-person shooter that nobody had seen before, that wasn't leaked and they didn't have an idea of it. Legends of Runeterra, a collectible card game in the League IP. Project L, a still unreleased fighting game, also in the League IP. And Arcane, a Netflix show that we would work on. So we had a lot to do. We had the backing of AWS. We knew that would be our infrastructure provider of choice. Going into 2020, we knew that the stakes were high. So I'll see if the actual video plays now, and if not, we'll move on. And finally, we become Riot Games. So going into 2020, that was our first launch was early 2020 with Legends of Runeterra, the collectible card game in the League IP. This was a cloud-first launch, not being latency sensitive, as more of a strategy game. We already had the entire game deployed on our cluster. We could have deployed it to a data center, but it was fully in cloud, both platform and game servers, all in cloud. This use of our cluster really helped accelerate the game development and made it easy to launch it in the cloud. So that was our first launch and went extremely well and gave us confidence for the new releases we would need to do going forward. So next came the launch of VALORANT. VALORANT, as a tactical first-person shooter, has a much more strict latency requirement. It really matters to our players whether their shots hit, whether they can see the enemy before the enemy can see them, and whether the game is fair overall. Competitive integrity is something we care a lot about, and our players care a lot about, and we wanted to deliver the best experience for them. So in order to do this, we literally had to combine the forces of both Riot and AWS. So we used 12 different AWS regions. We had 4 AWS Outposts regions that were deployed in combination with 5 Riot data centers that were in locations that AWS just didn't have a presence yet, and we needed to serve our players in. We also used both edge networks, both Riot Direct, who is Riot's own internal ISP, which we use to peer with other ISPs close to players and take their traffic onto our networks as soon as possible in order to give them the best experience. So we used a combination of both Riot Direct and AWS Global Accelerator, in order to hit our latency targets and make sure we gave the best experience to our players. We've spoken about Riot Direct before at reInvent and on other events, so yeah, I won't go into that too much here. So then just to give you an idea, on the top of what you saw before in terms of League of Legends shard deployment, you would now see a map here of the Valorant locations and see how we combined both the AWS footprint and the Riot Games footprint in order to hit as many of our players and give them the best experience we could. You could also imagine this then on top of the League of Legends deployments, and we had quite a lot to manage. However, for League of Legends, we were then still in the data center. It was the one piece we had successfully completed the launch of these new games, which had gone extremely well, probably above everyone's expectations, and they had done very well for the company. But we still had League of Legends almost entirely in the data center. We now needed to do that to move to be a fully cloud-first company and migrate League also out of the data center. So I'm going to hand it over to Aditya, who will talk you through how we actually got League of Legends and did that migration to get it out of the data center.
Thank you, Rory.
Okay.
So let's talk about migrations, right? Whenever I say migrations, I see mixed response like, migrations, do we really need to do it? Why do we need to do it? We're fine, like we are running in the data centers, everything is going all right. So why do we need to take this risk? Don't worry, we were at the same place, we were thinking the same back when we were doing this. So I'll take you over through the journey of what we had to do in order to get our services, our games out of the data center, and how we made it to the final state. If we put ourselves in the middle of a Summoner's Rift game right now, I would think that we are in the mid-game state. Like, we've started off well. We started with a hype. We've played some bots that came to us. Okay, now we understand our opposition. We also know where we need to get. We know the final destination. We know how we need to win. At this point, we just need to work together, try to find the right way, the right approach, and then win the game. That's how I see it. So at this point, what was Valorant and Legends of Runeterra doing was that they were cloud first. They were already in our cluster. They were doing all the good things. On the other hand, we had League of Legends and TFT who were running a very big player base. And then we were having a hybrid kind of approach for League of Legends and TFT. We were in the data center. We were also, some part of it, we were in the cloud. We had TFT game service running in the cloud. So it was, I think, now time to clean up all the things and then try to see how we can get to the good state that we finally need to go. Even before we even started working on migrations and cutovers and all that, the League engineering team, the tech foundations and the release management folks, everyone, they worked on how do we deploy League and how do we release the services that run on League, called as a release train. So they developed something called a release train, which actually maintains parity across all the shards we have. It maintains all the versioning for how we deploy our services, for how we release our services, and it automates a lot of manual work that used to be done back in the day. Service owners had to get onto this release train, had to onboard the release train to release their services along with the patch that goes out bi-weekly that you all know about. There were some strict regulations and rules if you need to get your service onto the release train. Like you need to have patch notes, you need to have all your configurations into one single monorepo so that it's easier for config management, branching, and all those services. So you need to have release notes. Your services should be able to do a rolling restart, batch rolling restarts, for example. If your service was being developed or being deployed by any legacy system, you need to move out to the latest version of our cluster, which was running back then. So all these things actually evolved how we do CI/CD for League, and it set up a good base for how the future of League will look like. At this point, we must be thinking, okay, now we've automated League of Legends. There's no more manual work. Click of a button, deploy goes out. The release train is actually helping us a lot. We're able to onboard new services. Existing services are all being deployed properly across all the regions and also China. We must be ready for migrations, right? Not really. If you recall, the reason why we actually started to work on the release train is so that it's easier for us to actually create new shards and then deploy new shards. So that was the hope when all of this was starting. And did it help? I think yes, it definitely did help. So we were able to deploy all these new shards, create new shards very easily because we had all our configurations in one single monorepo, and then we were able to clone these new shards. We had 2 dedicated teams to actually work on creating the shard automation, where they come up with all the services that are required for this new shard to run. Every shard is different for us. Like every shard has a bit of different configuration. Every shard is different, like a localization perspective, it's different. So all the things lived in one place, and then cloning the shard was easy, deploying it was easy, and then it was really good for us. On the other hand, we were also investing more in how we build the infrastructure as well. Like back in the day, like 4 or 5 years ago, developing all these base infrastructure took us like months together. First, we have to bring up the infrastructure, then the service teams comes on, they put their services, they configure their services, and then we talk about testing and deploying. Our older times, like the internal shards, actually took us like about 10 weeks, and then it took us like couple of teams to do it, and then a team ranges like 10 people or so, compared to the most recent, the internal shard that only took us like a couple of weeks with 2 to 3 engineers working on it. And we wanted to go live with PBE, we wanted to rebuild PBE with this release train and shard automation in January of 2021, but we took our time. We had like run bugs, we did all the things. We took our time, we wanted to make the automation ready so that we can go live, because coming ahead, we have a lot of data centers to migrate. So we rebuilt PB in early 2022, and then that has actually gave us more confidence. On the other hand, we were starting to hit limitations in our software-defined network layer. So we wanted to find something that is more like cloud-native tech stack approach and see if we can find anything more standardized. So we were looking at things, and Kubernetes stood out. Let me see. Show of hands, who nowadays are using Kubernetes, working on Kubernetes every day? Or, I see a lot of people, exactly. So that was pretty obvious. So we were looking at Kubernetes, which was actually becoming the industry standard at that point. There was a good support in the community. And then AWS EKS was offering as a managed service bundled with AWS support, with all other AWS services. It was going to be the obvious choice for us to integrate. And that is actually now our cluster 3.0. So our cluster 2 that Rory was talking about was now evolving into EKS, Kubernetes-based containerized platform for. It was the go-to place for deploying all the services at Riot. Game teams, internal teams, you name it. RC3 or our cluster 3.0 was the way to go. Separating internal clients, separating the game teams, isolating them in these clusters is very important to us from a security standpoint and also from a noisy neighbor standpoint, because all these games keep running like load tests constantly. They do development. So we had to create like different VPCs for each game, for each cluster. And then we had like them isolated for like dev gets a cluster, production gets a cluster, the load test gets a cluster. So we were able to separate that. And then we bundled that with the VPC CNI along with some homegrown like deployer tools. And we were able to easily migrate our customers from RC2 to RC3 without any downtime. And then the deploys were successful. We were able to manage all the security, layer of it, all the security groups very easily. So that was a good thing. Like you can see, that good elasticity that we had from AWS over here is that we were able to create all these new RC3 clusters in region, local zone, and outpost, which was one of the very important step to us, because we had Valorant already running in all these locations, and also coming up, we had plans for League to have them in all those places. So it was very important to us that we find something that can be supported in all these 3 places. At this point, I'm going to bring in Adrian for a brief amount of time so that he can talk about how we look at this global data center decommissioning from an operations perspective. Go ahead.
Dhanyavad. Okay, so we're kind of getting towards the end game here, but not yet. Few points that I wanted to bring up on how Riot Games really accelerated their project, their program, the global data center decommission. So Slalom was brought in. This is an AWS professional services partner. They had excellence in program management. They were already on board helping with hands-on the shard automation work. They were very pivotal in helping plan these. Once the business had set the shard exit or shard move dates based on lease end dates of the data centers and so on, Slalom ran with that. And they helped bring everyone together. Another key thing that Riot did that if anyone that has done a migration here before knows is very scary is they did a live rollback with the PBE environment that Aditya had mentioned. So this is their public beta environment. This is not like a quiet, low use shard. This is where all the best players want to go. This has the latest features, the latest patches. It's a very busy environment. And Riot took the big risk, and makes me nervous even to say it, but they rolled it up into the cloud, migrated it, then they rolled it back on-prem, bringing the data back. Wow, that's huge. Then they rolled it forward again. This is really key to proving to yourself as a business that we can do it. And the business, the stakeholders at the top, the infrastructure people on the bottom, everyone had much more confidence that now with PBE done, we could do all the remaining shards globally, right? And that risk was removed. Another item that was really pivotal, I want to have a shout out for the Riot Live Operations team, is this is the team that handles incident management and player comms during issues, but they also took it upon themselves to really drive and refine the cutover steps, the shard migration steps. And so each one that we did, they took the lessons learned, they saw where there was friction, where there was gaps, where people ran into issues, and they drove those down, and they burned them down, and it really reduced the risk for subsequent migrations. So awesome work by Live Operations. This refinement, the constant improvement of the migration steps enabled the next set of shard migrations. And Roy over there is wearing the t-shirt with all of them on the back, you'll see. To get done quickly, here you go, Hadi, wrap it up soon.
It takes a village to actually do all these migrations, because it's not like one strike team that we can have. We cannot have like one team that can do all of this. I want to give special shout out to like all the teams that were involved in the league, all the teams under League of Legends, all the teams under Player Platform. We have major work being done by infrastructure and operations, our partners, and then also our TAMs over here who are with us in those war rooms, be it night or be it day. And then the database folks, especially. The database folks did over 200 database migrations in this whole project, and then there was monumental amount of work. And our project managers who actually glued us together, because the engineers have like tendency of drifting away from like the work, and then they're like, okay, hey buddy, what's this deadline that you got here? So that was very much looked at because we were talking about months of work here. So that was being done there. Shard migration started to become like a routine. So we had done PBE, and then we had a big plan of all these coming up in 2022 and 2023. We were building our run book. We were iterating on our run book. After each migration, we had like rollback plans. After each migration, we had retros in case what we need to do to improve for next time. We were improving our downtime for players as well. PBE actually, the rebuild took over 8 hours of player downtime compared to the most recent shard migration, just under 3 hours. No surprises, no major issues. Everyone who were involved in these shard migrations, they knew what they had to do. They knew what time they had to come in, what were the steps they need to do, what configurations they have to apply and deploy. We were having like those common culprits that usually come out, what the issues that are coming up, we knew the solutions for them, so we had everything planned. Even people who were not involved with this migration from the very beginning, if we gave them the run book, and they would be able to easily run with it. Just the 3 of us who are like so deeply involved in these migrations can be standing here and talking in front of you, and there could be a migration tomorrow happening. Not just could, there is one happening tomorrow. And then yes, my team is actually working right now on making sure that we get that done for players tomorrow. So that's what's happening. Garena was our long-standing publishing partner in Southeast Asia for League and TFT since 2012. Our partnership, our contract with them was ending, so we had to make the decision that we will self-publish League and TFT in Southeast Asia. So the question was asked to us, are you able to spin up 5 shards, put them live at the same time so that players don't have any downtime between the contract end and between Riot takes over? I think the obvious answer you would guess, the answer was yes, because we had all the tools, all the instrumentation, all the automation, everything was ready. By that time, we had done PBE, we had done few live migrations, so we had the confidence in doing it, and that's what we did. We built 5 new League shards in Southeast Asia, along with the game servers, in order to not disrupt the player experience. What we did was we launched all these game servers in Southeast Asia, in Singapore region, and then just to make sure that players don't get any downtime, they just get to play. We had very much strong cooperation from Garena so that we can have account linking done so that players don't lose their cosmetics, their rank information, their player list, their friends list and everything. So everything was ported over and players started to play happily. We did this in early 2023. At the same time, we were also talking with AWS, our TAMs, on like how can we improve the latency for a subset of region of players who are not having the best ping at that point from Singapore. So we started looking at Outpost, we started looking at local zones, and then we started to place orders with them on how can we get this capacity, how can we get the hardware. We're talking about thousands of servers here. So it was a lot of work going on parallelly along with these migrations. So eventually, we were able to move all the players in those regions to Outposts and local zones. Now they're able to play with great ping and latency in Southeast Asia. While all of this is going on, Garena migrations, live migrations, release train is deploying League every 2 weeks. That's not stopping. New content is being dropped. We were also working on how can we optimize what we currently have in the cloud. We were looking at fleet refreshes, and then we looked at C6i instance type for League game servers, and then it was a couple of months of big project to migrate all of the League game servers to C6i worldwide. We also looked at what are the other things that we can do. Some microservices for League were in our cluster, some were outside of our cluster, living on bare EC2 instances. For them, we decided that we should migrate them to M6i, beef up the instances, and then give them more memory allocations, give them more cost-efficient instances. And it was like a 4-month project. I was like 3 to 4 engineers. We had migrated the whole platform servers to M6i. The infrastructure and operations team are also working on how we can do enable horizontal pod auto-scaling that was mainly used by Valorant so that we can scale down when we don't need the capacity, and then also we can scale up when we actually need the capacity. That hugely helped us bring down our costs. Few other improvements which do it like custom termination behavior in ASGs so that we can drain those pods gracefully so that we can scale down efficiently. So this actually helped us improve the total cost of ownership on how we actually manage each service, each product team service, and if they're using all these services that we're providing them, it did help. I'm going to give it to Hadrian now so that he'll just talk about some takeaways and then what did we get out of this.
Okay. That was a long road, almost done. So I hope that you've seen the beginning, the mid-game, we're at the end game here. What are the takeaways? Riot really made a lot of big tech investments early on, not necessarily for the purpose of moving to cloud, but they made a huge impact. So the Terraform investment, infrastructure as code, skill set, becoming really, really good at that, all their teams made a huge, huge impact in their ability to move quickly into cloud. Our cluster and starting off with that mindset of abstracting infrastructure from devs, very important. The elasticity of AWS compute, turning out compute where you want it, turning it down where player demands change, getting the compute where you need it as well, if it's an outpost rack or server in a data center there farther away from a region, closer to your customers, closer to your players. So we've come full circle. Can I see a show of hands? Anyone ever seen one of these in real life? I figured there would be a lot less. This is unless you've shredded 20,000 hard drives, this is an enterprise, humongous hard drive shredder. So decomming the data centers, don't want to discount that. That's a big process. But now we're kind of at that stage. We're getting done with the project. Still some work to do, but already realizing a lot of value, a lot more than just getting the game servers, getting platform into the cloud. This is, it can't be understated that these are live game servers. The players need new content to get dropped. They need their bug fixes. That release train never stopped through all of these things. And the program evolved. It wasn't just moving the shards. It was optimizing, right? We did a first move, then optimize. We did the Garena migrations. Throughout the whole thing, they kept going and kept their players happy. Player experience above everything. That's the Riot motto. The other things that this unlocked from a business perspective was the gameplay modes used to be a little bit disparate. All that shard uniformity, that configuration management work that they did allowed same type of gameplay globally. So their players around the world didn't have to look on some geo and say, I wish I could play like them. It's the same everywhere. So yes, shorter time to build shards, getting that infra ready is now a lot easier. The uptime, all these things, they don't have to worry about managing data centers, dealing with hardware refreshes, other than Terraform work. So we've reached a lot more players in a lot more parts of the world by now as well, and have a lot of scale also to address things like soaking DDoS. So what does this unlock for Riot Games? Yes, AWS handles the blocking and tackling for infrastructure and getting their compute and delivering managed services for them. And this allows a very strategic partnership to happen once those tactical things are handled. So this is so much more than just Riot leaning on us as a vendor, right? This is a true partnership We advocate for Riot inside AWS, and we fought together, so to speak, in the VALORANT term to collaborate on where we're going to put local zones, new features, whether it's UDP changes in global accelerator for the VALORANT use case, or NLB security groups, pod security groups for RC3. And this has been such a humongous project, and excited to do more with Riot. So I wanted to wrap it up and say thank you to Riot Games for sharing their story. Rory, Adi, come on stage. Come on, Pavir. And thank you guys for attending our session. If you liked it and you want us to come back again, please open up the survey app and give us a like and a subscribe.